And so that is wired into us, the need for one another in order to feel secure in this world. Mm-hmm. And that's wired into us from when we're babies. And when we're born, we are the most helpless creatures that there are. I would say most people that come in thinking their partner is a narcissist, their partner isn't a narcissist, mm-hmm. an actual narcissist. Their partner is in pain.
After over 25 years of marriage, we've learned that successful couples have great friendships, put each other first, and focus on light just as much as love. We believe marriage should be fun and easy.
Our goal is to share our journey with the hopes of helping others build strong, happy relationships. Join us as we continue to create our lives beyond I do.
We are not marriage counselors, nor are we mental health professionals. We're just simply sharing y'all how we navigated through our marriage. Now, on with the show.
Let's take a step back in time.
I wish.
Panama City.
Panama, not Florida.
Panama City, Panama. Yes. That was a wonderful time. Wonderful, wonderful time. And we did do some work while we were there, right?
Yep.
And what I mean by work was we did an interview.
That we did.
That we scheduled. Honestly, we just didn't block out the time and they schedule, so we had to make that thing work, but it was worth it.
We always work on vacation. We take that time. We're clear-headed. We can focus. And plus, this work feels good.
It's not even really work. It's not even really work, y'all.
It's not.
But we had the wonderful pleasure of interviewing Miss Hanna Basel, who is a licensed couple therapist. And let me tell y'all, she gets it. Sound like something I would say.
It does. So Hanna works with couples who feel like they're stuck, who are disconnected. And in addition to being a couples therapist, she's also a sex therapist. So she works with couples who are struggling with intimacy and sex.
Yep. She's licensed in Minnesota and Oregon. And she takes the emotion first, sex second approach that really gets to the root of what's going on.
If you ever felt like your relationship was off, but you really couldn't put a finger on it, you might want to stick around for this episode.
Yes. And please listen while Margaret and I take this journey back into time. When we were in Panama City, Panama.
Yes.
Interviewing Miss Hanna Basel.
I know oftentimes, when we get into it about something, we know it's never about what we're arguing about. So how do you help the couples feel comfortable and get to that place so that you can get at what's really going on?
Yeah, so I think, some of the things that I do is just in terms of the beginning of the process, it's the full focus is comfort, is just trying to get to know them as people, not just as the problem that's coming in. It's believing in them, believing in their good intentions, and letting them know that I see their good intentions. A lot of times people are afraid to go into therapy because they think they're going to be blamed or their problem. And the foundation of my belief is that everything people do makes sense for a reason. We just need to figure out what that reason is. And so that really helps me. And the other thing that I try and kind of work from is a place of relentless empathy, which is not always easy when you see, a partner yelling at their partner or, right, kind of really blind in terms of the impact they're having. But it's really important to try and hold that frame of relentless empathy with couples.
Right.
And when you say relentless empathy, what does that look like?
On the outside, that would look like me. Let's say a couple is coming in highly escalated, right? Where one person might be blaming the other. So an example of this would be a couple comes in and maybe the husband thinks that the wife's trauma is to blame for all of their problems. Mm-hmm. And so he'll come in and he'll say, she's messed up, she needs to go to therapy, right? The work she's doing just isn't enough, and so on. And so for most people, when they see that, they're gonna kind of cringe, right? And some people might actually totally align and be like, yeah, he's right. But a lot of people will cringe, especially just seeing how someone is going about it, right? Whether that's true or not, how someone goes about it is important. And so what that will look like for me is trying to look underneath what he's doing, to look for his pain, to look for what is the vulnerable emotion that is provoking him. Because one of the things that I work from is from attachment theory. So attachment theory believes that we all have universal needs and longings for love and connection. And so if I believe that, which I do, I'm looking for what this person is doing in the frame of attachment and how it makes sense.
And you were just saying he. So the partner is saying she's messed up, she needs help. And you're zeroing in on why his behavior is to react in that way. There was a book several years ago. we had been married I was pregnant with Reagan. So we had been married for maybe 4.5 years. And I was convinced that he was broken. Something was wrong with him. And I got this book. And I was going to read the book to figure out how to fix him. And the author started out by saying, if you're reading this book because you think you're going to fix your partner, stop. And so that accountability piece is so important. That's something that we've had to learn as we've gotten older and more mature, is that a lot of times we focus on what our partner is doing when we really need to look and figure out what's going on within us.
Yes, hallelujah. That's so true. And it's hard. I mean, I struggle with it too. But I think marriage and long-term relationships are a mirror. And they hold up parts of us that we often don't see until we're in these relationships and are trying to do this kind of work.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Now, Anna, when we look at social media today, you see a lot of misinformation, a lot of just junk. You have nowadays, you have so many people, relationship gurus on these social media platforms telling people, about 50-50 or whatever the popular topic is at that time. Now, what are some of the biggest myths about relationships that you have come across in your profession?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think that if it's hard, that means it's wrong.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's.
I love that. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
I've seen that a couple of times. There was a Reddit thread. Is marriage supposed to be this hard? And it was so encouraging to see people say, if it's that hard, you probably shouldn't be married, or maybe you married the wrong person, but it shouldn't be that hard. But it's a challenge from time to time, and it takes effort. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree. It does. It takes effort. And I think that oftentimes people feel like love should feel natural, or that you'll know it's just right for you. And I think that, love isn't intuitive for a lot of people, especially if you've had trauma or if you're coming from a place where you grew up in chaos, or where you learned that love might mean abandonment or distance, right? There's all these different things that we've been taught as children about what love is. How can we trust our own intuition sometimes when it comes to love then?
Right.
Yes.
Right. So we recently, I don't think we haven't released, or have we released it? There was an episode we did where we talked about divorce, and one of the last point we did, the last point was that sometimes divorce is the choice to make. So, and he went on to say how once you've worked through things and you still get to that same point, that it's okay, because a lot of times in society, in certain religions, you're not supposed to get divorced. So do you have couples that come to you that put in that work and then they decide still this just isn't it?
Very rarely.
Okay.
Most couples come in and realize that things could have gotten better a lot sooner if they had gotten help. And I would say that's probably 98%.
Okay.
There are times when people aren't willing to be fully honest or do the work, or are coming in and they're already detached.
Okay.
And I'd say those cases are ones where it doesn't matter the work that we're going to do at that point, because we're either not working with the whole truth, or we're working with someone that is there for show for whatever reason,
right,
but not really there because they want to be in the relationship.
Right.
Right.
Do you work with just individuals? If there's relationship problems, do they come in sometimes just the husband, just the wife?
Oh, sure. If I'm working with a couple, will I see them individually sometimes? Yes, as long as both are okay with that.
Okay. Do you ever get just one person from the couple that says, this isn't working, but he or she isn't agreeing to come, so I'm here?
Have I had that happen? Yes, I actually had that happen really recently. But the person wasn't agreeing to come for one time. It wasn't that they were never going to come. And so what will happen then is I'll have the session with this individual, and then I'll reach out to the partner and I'll say, hey, let's talk. Let's figure out why you don't want to come in. Let me figure out either how to make it safer for you so that you can come in, or figure out how you're feeling unheard by me or by your partner.
Right.
What conditions do you need to come back to the table?
Right. Do you often find it, and I heard something recently, because, someone, and I can't remember where we got it from, it may have come from an interview, but a young lady was telling us that a lot of times in her part, there were a lot of men that were reaching out to try to save the marriage. What's the ratio of that in your expertise?
Yeah, I would say that that's true. I have probably more than you would expect.
Oh, wow.
It's probably 50-50, honestly, in terms of, and I actually have a lot of infidelity cases where it's not the man that stepped out, it's the woman that stepped out, and it's the man that's reaching out to try and desperately fix it.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you asked that, because that's something that's one of those things that we hear, and we're conditioned to think infidelity, well, the man stepped out, or a therapist, the woman reached out, and she pulled him along,
Right.
kicking and screaming the whole way. So
we're evolving as a society.
We are evolving.
So going back to what he said earlier, the idea of the pop psychology, and a few years back, all of a sudden everything became traumatic and toxic, and everyone is a narcissist, and everyone uses weaponized incompetence and all these things. How do you think that has affected how couples interact when you have all this misinformation being spread?
I think that there's pros and cons to it, right? One is that there's a lot of access to these topics and much more talk about it, which I appreciate that part. The downside, I think, is jumping to labels. and that when you jump to labels, you might be missing the full story. I would say most people that come in thinking their partner is a narcissist, their partner isn't a narcissist, an actual narcissist. Their partner is in pain. And the way they might be coping with it is by coming across as controlling or coming across as self-centered, coming across as demanding, right? And these are ways that this person, usually the man, is responding to his own pain because he doesn't know a better way. When I help him get to a different place where he can get in touch with his emotions, he wants to do something different. And so I think if your partner wants to do something different, then he's not a narcissist. If he's willing to work and change, he's not a narcissist.
Right.
Yeah, that term, it's like popular within the last 5 years or so. And it's funny, like up until then, I never really heard that term frequently used. So it's like, I remember we used to just call it a selfish asshole, before. It's like now everybody's a narcissist. It's like, that is definitely not the case, but I'll let you believe that.
Yeah. I agree. We should probably bring back the selfish asshole, right? That's probably more accurate.
Right.
Definitely.
In those moments.
And that's interesting too, the men reaching out and then not knowing how to express those emotions. But in society, we start very young with boys and how we react to them, and when they're hurt and when they're sad, we react differently than when a little girl is hurt and sad. And so a lot of those things, we haven't made it very safe for men to express those emotions. So I love that you have men who are reaching out who recognize that, because a lot of them still don't.
Yeah.
I appreciate it too. And I think it's really brave when they do. And it's a testament, right, to how much they want to work on the relationship and how much they love their partner and how much they're willing to do the work to change.
Right. Now, I know in your profession and I know in your expertise, there's this thing we used to say, and then she used to say it all the time: I just want to be normal. And I said, baby, I don't think there necessarily is a normal. I think people just have different levels of crazy. Now, is that something that you just trying to have a little fun with this,
I agree with that, honestly. I think we need to normalize hardship. We need to normalize, right, experiencing anxiety and depression contextually. Right? That usually when we're having a hard time, it's because the context around us is giving us a hard time. Right? And I think so often we have been taught to turn on ourselves and say, what's wrong with me?
Right.
Why am I not normal? Or why am I not cut out for this? And if we back out, there's usually a really understandable story for why you might be struggling in that moment and what you might be struggling with.
I'm still amazed at, I'm 50, and some of the things that I experienced in childhood, how those things have affected me, and I've carried those things. The making myself small to get out of the way and things like that drives him crazy. He walks into a room and I'm doing something and I stop and move out of his way. But I've been conditioned to make myself small and stay out of the way to not create friction. So a lot of those things we bring with us. And then there's guilt and shame because I'm an adult. Why am I still doing these things?
Right. Yeah, we underestimate the power of our nervous system being wired.
Right.
Yes. It's like subconsciously you're doing things you don't even realize you're doing.
Or you don't realize that it's not normal, or it's not, or you don't think that there's anything wrong with you. You don't realize how it's affecting you.
Yeah. You don't know there's another way.
Right. You touched on attachment theory earlier. If you could, just a brief explanation of what that is and how that kind of plays out in some of the issues with relationships.
Yeah, sure. So really briefly, attachment theory is based on the idea that we are wired to connect, right? And that the way that humans have survived is actually through connection and collaboration, right? We don't have sharp teeth. We don't have claws. We can't run like tigers, right? So the way that we actually survive is by working together to keep one another safe. And so that is wired into us, the need for one another in order to feel secure in this world. And that's wired into us from when we're babies. And when we're born, we are the most helpless creatures that there are, right? Like if a turtle is born, it instinctively knows how to go to water.
Right.
And I think that deer is born and it can walk within hours or minutes, something like that. We rely on someone for years.
Yeah.
Right? That's how dependent we are. And so it's understanding that, accepting that we are wired to need one another, right? It's not a fault. It's not a problem. And then understanding how that drives us. That's kind of the premise of attachment, that the way that we are responded to as children, like you were saying, determines how we operate in the world. It determines how we see ourselves. Am I lovable? Am I too much? Am I a burden? And it determines what we expect others to be. Will they show up? Will they disappoint me? Are they going to leave? So that's a very basic kind of way that it begins to shape us and shape our relationships.
Right.
Kind of like the child doesn't bond with the parent. It's like that detachment disorder. Is the
Reactive attachment. Yes. Yes. We've adopted.
Like you've adopted kids?
We've adopted a child, so we are familiar with reactive attachment disorder.
Yeah. And again, that's so understandable that the child would have developed that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We were discussing it earlier, how like with the adoption process, the kids, especially kids who are older, they're wonderful. They have that honeymoon phase. And then once you sign the paperwork, all hell breaks out because I have to test to make sure that you mean you're going to keep me. And I think that
we took an exam.
We passed. I think we passed.
We took a essay.
We
That shows how strong and resilient you guys
It
are.
was rough, but we passed. But in relationships, I think some of the things that we see are the same types of things. So if that's something that I've struggled with in childhood and I still haven't healed from that, then I'm going to push it. I'm going to see, are you really committed? I know you said vows. I know you've been here for 27 years, but do you really mean it?
Yes, 100%. 100%, right? That if I expect people to let me down based on my childhood, I'm going to be suspicious. If I fear I'm too much, then I might try and stay small or even overfunction. And like you're saying, right, if I expect someone to leave me, then some people will start to test, right? It's better to do it now. It's better to figure it out now than later. At least it's in your control.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I just recently had to tell her one day, just jokingly, and I'm like, baby, yeah. So think about this now. So for 27 years, I just been egging you along, thinking, all right, by year 28, I'm just gonna go ahead and let it happen.
I think it's important to, like, we've shared things like that on other episodes, and I think it's important for people to hear that.
Yeah.
Even after 27 years of being married, even after I've been in therapy several years, he and I have couple sessions, like there's still, those things still come back, and that's okay. Especially when you're continually working on it.
And I'm sure you can attest to this. It's not like they disappear. You just learn how to deal with them. The insecurities will always be. Just learn how to deal with them better.
Yes. You start to see them differently too, right? When you can understand what's underneath the way your partner is showing up in the relationship, you can have more compassion for it. And so most of the time we're showing up in ways that are just trying to protect us. We're just trying to survive. And so I think that part of it is really understanding the story behind the behavior, not just the behavior.
Right. I have found it has been so helpful to have a partner who extends grace and who is supportive and who has held my hand every step of the way, even if he's holding my hand in support of me after I've lost it on him for an imaginary reason. I mean, so that has been so important. So for the partner who has not experienced those traumas, how do you support that partner in supporting the partner who is working through these things?
Good question.
Well, I think part of it is understanding how trauma operates, and that it is still alive, and that it might take a while, that it's a process, and it might be slower. I think letting someone see how trauma has really shaped their partner, and how all of us are responding to things that are historical, and that even if the partner has not experienced trauma, they are still responding to things in their childhood. And so, they can come from a common place. I think the other thing is that I really try and help people externalize their conflict to talk about it as if it's a pattern, because it usually is. Right. So to talk about, to see the pattern versus the person, right? And the thing that you're not liking about your partner is usually something to do with their behavior, right?
Right.
And how can we not like how they show up and not like the behavior and how it creates the cycle or participates in the cycle versus blaming your partner and seeing them as bad or seeing them as broken.
Right.
Now, in addition to just couples therapy, you are a therapist, you're also a certified sex therapist. So what types of things, when couples come to you specifically for support in that area, what types of things do you see that the couples are struggling with?
Yeah, so there's different kinds of sex therapists. And so I consider myself an emotion first, sex second kind of sex therapist. There are some therapists that are going to work more on the physiology and give you exercises and, maybe refer you to some doctors and that sort of thing. I try and first focus on what's happening inside. And after I assess. And so I work for how do I create more safety first in the relationship. The most common problems that I work with are desire discrepancy, so mismatched libidos, or having completely stopped sex and having stopped it for years.
Oh, wow.
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 So usually those are the two that will come in. They'll come in and it will have been a few years at this point, and they kind of gave up. But one partner is saying, "I don't know if I can go on like this."
Right. I'm stuck on years.
I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. He was involved with the young lady, and I remember him telling me their relationship had dissolved by this point. But I remember him telling me that it had been twice in 1 year. And that just destroyed me because I'm like, 2 times in one. I mean, y'all live together and it was 2 times in one.
Sounds like you guys have a healthy sex life.
How did that happen? I can't even go 2 days without thinking about it. It just amazes me how when it gets to that point where there's just no sex at all, I know it has to be definitely mental. So, and I'm sure there are lots of different reasons why this takes place. But is it more mental than physical or physical over mental? I guess I'm trying to say.
I would say the cases that I've seen, it is more mental. The people that actually have physical limitations usually really want to work on it. They have a problem with the physical limitations with either having pain during intercourse or, trouble getting erections. Most of them are coming in and it is a physical block that we have to work.
Right. Okay.
Or we have to work on reducing anxiety with women and in the relationship.
Yeah.
But I would say that oftentimes when it has been a while, there has been a big rupture in the relationship. And that's how it started. And the rupture has not been repaired fully.
Right.
So that's what happens when you kick the can down the road.
Oh my God.
The deal situation. And then they say, you're not sleeping together for 2 years.
There is some truth to that. There is some truth, right?
And you commented, and obviously we have a healthy sex life, but it wasn't always that way. Especially in the midst of kids and prior to me being in therapy, and there was so much going on. But there again, because I had a partner who extended grace and who came to realize it's not me, it's something else. It's not me. That hurt, but I'm not going to take it personal because it's not me. And so in those situations, it helped me get to a place of comfort and get to a place of vulnerability so I could open up. And the closer we were connecting and communicating, the easier the intimacy came. So that's been the biggest thing for us, is the connection outside of the bedroom.
Yeah. That's why I always work on restructuring the bond before I try and fix someone's sex life. And so that's where I'm on emotions first. People, if they want to come in and directly work on sex, I'm usually going to be a little bit tricky and work on emotions first and the bond before we work on the actual sex. Yeah.
We can deal with the physical, but let's work on this.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there next session.
And I know for me, that part came easily once he was aware of, okay, it's not me. And then he's always been very supportive and active when it came to the kids and household things, but maybe step it up a little bit if I realize she's having a bad day or, things like that. And so those were the things that helped me feel more comfortable and realize that he's doing this for me.
I had to tell a guy at work one time. This guy was probably 10 years older than me at the time. And he was like, man, I don't know what's going on, man. She ain't like she don't want to have sex with me no more, man. I'm thinking about going outside. I said, well, what's going on? So as he's explaining stuff to me, he's like, well, I don't do much. All I do is go hunting and fishing and blah, 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 blah. I said, but you work shift work like I do, right? So every time you're off, you're not putting in any time with her, but you expect her to just lay down at the drop of a hat, you know what I'm saying? Right. So that might be your problem, and he kind of looked it off. And, okay, well then, he pulled me to the side one day and he was like, hey man, you know what, you was right.
I think that is really, really common, where, women kind of feel like that's what their husband wants from them. And that the other parts of their lives or their needs aren't cared about.
For me, I had to realize that I felt like he just wants sex. I had to realize that he wants sex with me. It wasn't just about an ends to the mean to the ends. It was, I want to be intimate with my wife. And that was eye-opening for me because I just felt like I'm doing my wifely duty and then I can get some sleep.
Right.
And so,
I like to think about it kind of, right, I bond with my husband. Like, I want to have deep conversations. And where we look each other in the eye and where I feel like he gets to know me and we talk about hard things and we come away with a new understanding. That is not how my husband feels close. Right? That actually feels really dangerous to him. How he feels close is through sex.
Right.
And so I've had to really understand that parallel that in the same way, I want to have deep conversations, and he's not really inclined. He will have them, right? He may be a therapist.
Yeah.
He will have them, but it's not like he's not going to do it. If I wasn't there, he wouldn't be doing that on his own, right? And so that's really also a helpful frame for me, along with what you were saying, that it is them wanting to experience closeness with us.
Right. I just realized he has a double whammy. It's not just I want to talk, but it's I'm a therapist and I want to talk. Now you answer me.
Yep. Tell me everything.
There's the old shit factor. Anytime a dude here, we need to talk, or
but it's double.
Let me ask you, and still to this day, I know she'll ask me something. It'll be something totally in it. She'll be like, "Look at this," and my heart just start pounding.
So, you mentioned infidelity. When couples come and there has been infidelity, how do you approach that? Because earlier we talked about the accountability of me. I'm not just going to point fingers at him. When it comes to infidelity, how do you approach that with the partner who did not commit infidelity versus the partner who did?
Yeah. Well, I'm working with the relationship, right? So the first thing that I will do is, because I'm an emotionally focused therapist, I really, before I try and focus on any behavioral correction, I'm just trying to understand who these people are, how they operate, and again, why they operate the way they do. And so the first step is understanding their cycle as a relationship. How do they reach for each other? How do they respond to each other? How do they protect one another? Where is the pain? And I want to understand the infidelity in the frame of their cycle. Because infidelity is usually how someone is coping with an unmet need.
Right.
And that's not excusing it. I'm not saying that's okay.
Yeah.
But I am saying it is human, and that it's coming from a place of not knowing how to get that need met, maybe in a different way.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that's one thing that it's hard to, like you said, that it doesn't excuse it, but there's usually a reason. There's usually something going on that hasn't been addressed, and it grows and gets bigger, and then, it happens. But it's difficult to think about being in that situation without the anger and the frustration.
Oh, the anger and the frustration is there. Yeah. I invite the anger and frustration, right? It's there for a reason.
Now, do you find that with men who the wife committed or was not faithful, how do the partners react when it's the woman who's unfaithful versus the man?
Yes.
A lot of women, I know, we get emotional. There's pain, but
it's like I've heard men say, if she cheats on me, it's done. I don't want nothing else to do with her.
And I think a lot of people think that before it happens to them.
Right.
It's much better to think that than, because when we're in a relationship and we think about ending it, it feels like death. Right. It feels like nothing harm.
Right.
And so it makes sense that people will try and work through it. But did you ask how do I deal with how does it show up? You asked.
Right. In men versus women.
Yes.
Right. I would say that in my experience, women tend to be more escalated and tend to be protesting more.
Okay.
I think I see men coming in more in shame when they've been cheated on. What's wrong with me? I failed. This is, I'm a man and I was cheated on. I don't want anyone to know about this. I don't want anyone to know that I want to work on it.
Right.
So I see more shame versus escalation. and maybe an expression of anger.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I guess in society we've been told for so long. Well, when I think about it from a teenage standpoint. You know, when you were dating as a teenager, you know, oh, well, he two-timed me, or you know, he had another girlfriend, and I think about it from that standpoint. But when it does happen, do you find a lot of times that, you know, and I've heard excuses from no attention to, you know, busy doing this. And I'm coming from a person where I work shift work and I work in a paper mill. And I've seen guys, you know, that every time the gates are open, they're working.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe you might be neglecting some things. And then I've heard these things happen. Guys that come home from work and walked in on their wives, you know, sleeping with men or what have you, you know. So do you find a lot of times that it's sheer neglect, or is it something that's definitely emotional?
I think that I probably have a theory on this that might be different than some people, and there'll be a lot of different opinions. But I tend to think that happens with the people that have more avoidant attachment. And so because they have avoidant attachment, they fear intimacy. They fear having those conversations, asking for their needs, instead of asking and having those hard conversations and letting their partner know, I am longing for more right now, right? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling alone. Instead, they do what in many ways is easier.
Yep. Yep.
Where they turn out. And that's why people do that. I think it is easier than to look at yourself and to dig deep and to work through these uncomfortable phases that all relationships are going to go through.
Right. That's amazing. And it's crazy because I've seen, and I'm not talking about these people, but I've seen guys tell me purposefully that they went and had other relationships or had affairs on their wives. But then when she found out and she decided to divorce them, and they just go through it. They just go through like hell. And he's like, you the one, you know, it's hard for me to feel sorry for you because you telling me about your rendezvous, but then you're not coming to work, you're sleeping at work, you're not functioning as a human being. I know that divorce just takes anybody out, just looking at them. I don't need to go through all that. But at what point do you feel like, okay, divorce is just probably the way you need to go, or do you ever feel like that when it comes to a couple?
So I very rarely get to that point, probably because of how I'm wired, that I really believe in people's love and love stories. And I also really, I think I understand that what can look like toxicity on the outside sometimes isn't on the inside. And so I think that if it's harming you, if it's harming your mental health, if you feel like you're losing yourself, and it's been a period of time, and your partner isn't willing to work on it, it's time to leave.
Right.
If your partner's willing to work on it, then it's up to you, right? How long has this been going on? If it's been a month, I would say work on it. And if you have a therapist and it's not working, get a different therapist. Right? Get help though, because most relationships can be helped in my opinion and in my experience.
So as we get ready to wrap things up, how do we get to a place where we don't have to come to you for the repair? We come to you to make it better. How do couples get to that point to where prevent getting to the point of needing the repair part?
Ooh, I think that so how do people prevent having big injuries?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say that is being intentional about your relationship. Are you checking in? with how you're each feeling. I asked my husband, how are you feeling? And he's like, what? How are you feeling about the relationship? Right? Like, I want to know, are you feeling good? Are you feeling alone? Are you feeling, and I really want to know. And you have to be ready to hear it, because your partner is going to have moments where the relationship doesn't feel all that great. And that's okay. Right? But you want to be talking about it. And part of that is being present. So not letting your relationship just go on autopilot and think that that's going to work. It's not going to.
Right. It's funny that you said you ask him how it's going. I would ask him, is there anything you need to tell me? Yeah. Comes from a completely different place. Means the same. You got something to tell me?
Yeah, I only ask my husband that when I think he's done something wrong.
See?
Exactly. That's where it goes. So it's like, what did I do this week? I've been good.
So we want to wrap things up, but we want to give you the opportunity to let listeners know how they can find more about you, find what type of resources you have available. So how can the listeners find you?
Yeah, so I have a website where I blog, and I have a course that I'm creating, and my website is hzbtherapy.com. And I'm also pretty active on Instagram. It's therapy with Hanna B. And I, post things. I try and get creative, and if I hear quotes that I like, I'll post them. And so that's where I try and share a lot of my learning.
Yes, and I can attest to that. Check out that IG, because you be spitting some jewels now. I'm going to say that. So.
Thank you.
So we want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so
much.
Thank
you for your knowledge and sharing. We appreciate it. And we are going to make sure to have the links in posted for listeners to find.
All right, y'all, we back. We are back from Panama City.
Anywho,
in our minds, at least,
we want to express gratitude for Hanna sharing her expertise with us.
Yes.
We learned a lot. We hope that you did as well. We appreciate the realness, the honesty, and the authenticity. I think that's something that we all need.
Yeah. There was so much in here, from how childhood stuff shows up in a marriage to why it's not always about what it looks like on the surface. So
right.
that was something else.
And that's something that I think is so important when you see couples who are bickering or they just can't get along. You have to look and see. What we learned was to wonder and look under.
Yeah, wonder
that's
and look under.
That's what we learned in our training, in our coursework. Wonder
sure
and
did.
look under. So if you want to continue to learn more from Hanna, make sure to check out her website, hzbtherapy.com. She's also on Instagram at Therapy with Hanna B, and that's HANNAB.
Yeah.
And her Instagram she's very active on there. She gives a lot of good information, so make sure to check that out.
Yep. So if you're listening to this episode and it made you feel seen, share it with your partner or your crew. These are the kind of conversations we need to be having more often.
Absolutely.
All right.
And don't forget to follow us not only on the podcast, but also on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. We also have our Etsy shop, Friends First. Yeah. Our TikTok shop, Beyond I Do Friends First, so you can get some merchandise and let people know that you're friends first, but you're still married.
That's right.
All right. Until next time.
We will holler at y'all. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Beyond I Do podcast.
Please make sure to like this episode and also subscribe to our podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at the Beyond I Do podcast.
And until next time,
We will holler at y'all.